Hey, welcome everyone to Healing Wednesdays in the Circle of 12. We're just here having a great time. Every single Wednesday, we come together and we have special guests. Often they're just the premier folks doing the best healing on the planet. We have a question and answer section, which you'll see in a moment. We have discussions, meditations, and channeling. You are
Monica Morani.
And
you are?
I am Lee Carroll. And we are going to be together and we're going to present together, and you're going to see us do that in just a moment. This is our once-a-month free program. And we appreciate all of those who are here for the first time, but especially those of you who are joining us, for instance, on YouTube. And I want to talk to both you and I want to talk to the subscribers. Subscribers and members, thank you for joining us yet again. If you're a member, you know that you receive one of these programs every single Wednesday of the year. If you're a member, you also have replays of all the programs we do forever. So if you're a member, no matter how many programs we've done, you have access to all of them. Not only do you have access to all of them, there are special things in your portals. There are audios of every single one of these programs. There's the special music we use. There's special Q&A. In other words, we're telling you that a subscription might be a very good thing. It's easy to go to cryonmasters.com. We'll tell you all about this program. Anyway, just thank you for joining us, especially for those of you perhaps who are for the first time seeing what goes on here. We are streaming, and the live streaming may carry with it a little more, I say, power that your internet needs to do. If you have trouble, there are replays. There are replays for all the members. There are replays for those of you joining us free. They're on YouTube, and you can see them. So what I want to tell you is if there's problems here, if you start and stop or whatever, Monica and I want to say this is not the way we designed the program. What we want very much is for a smooth, spiritual experience, a wonderful experience. You don't have to worry about the technical. Watch the replay if you're in trouble here. So Monica, thank you again for being here. Do you realize, for those of you joining us for the first time, we have accomplished a year of these?
It's amazing. And if you are, again, watching for the first time, it's not just welcome to the Healing Wednesday, welcome to our community. We have such a beautiful community of light workers that gather during these Healing Wednesday programs, and the energy of connecting with those group of souls is tangible. You can feel it. And so if you're tuning in, welcome, and you are now part of that beautiful collective group as well. Our members also give us beautiful questions that we answer, and so we are now going to take a question. This one comes from Anna. Anna is in Berlin, Germany. Anna says that Cryon mentioned you have to live with one foot in the physical realm and the other in the beyond the veil, beyond the mist realm. But in this way, you are still separated. So Anna is asking, how can you truly combine both realms here instead of switching between them? How do we be in both realms at once?
This, I guess, I would say this is the crux of the test. This is why we are here. Yeah. Mothers, answer the phone. Help the kids button themselves up. Walk over and turn off the stove and whatever. This is called multitasking. You don't have any trouble with that, especially mothers who have to do this constantly. To the guys at work, you have to multitask all the time, up to maybe 3 or 4 times the same thing. We do this. This is not that unusual, I would think, for any human being. It is just like that. You can have one foot in the spiritual world and one foot in the practical world. We can easily multitask this. I had to learn this. In fact, one of the things Cryon told me was to make sure that this happened instead of separating, okay, I'm going to be over here channeling, and now I'm going to be over here doing something else. It's called a meld, and it's a meld of consciousness. So we pull all that we know about our spiritual selves, all that we're learning, into our practical lives. This is not a linear puzzle where you have to put something there and put something there. All of this that we do on Circle of 12, when we cross the bridge from one place to another, it's very, very different, going from the known to the unknown. And Cryon says, all of that we're doing is a rehearsal for someday there's no bridge. And so that is truly, Anna, the answer to the question. You put them together. They're not supposed to be separate, even though they may seem to be separate. That make sense?
It does. And I love what you said about spiritual multitasking consciousness. That's a great way to look at it. So
we have a doozy coming up here.
We do.
And we have selected these questions. We select them and we preview them in advance, and we look at the hardest ones because I think they're the most important for everyone.
Yeah, they are. So we have Carol from Israel saying, or asking actually, how can a person deal with a situation happening around him, such as rioting, unrest, shooting missiles between countries without getting involved emotionally? This is happening around me now in my country of Israel. I can't ignore it, such as turning off the TV. How do I work with this? Now, this is a very pertinent question, and it's why we've chosen it, like Lee said, because it is a situation where you can't just turn the TV off and ignore that there's
No, let me just
turmoil
say that. You're right.
around.
Carol is absolutely right. We're, in my country, and here in the U.S., I can turn off the TV, and I don't have missiles coming at me or anything. This is it gives me chills. I've been to Israel now many times. I know exactly what she's talking about. In fact, my first visit, and I forgot the year I went. It's even before I knew you. They were having problems just like that. I chose to go anywhere, and I can remember when I showed up at the customs booth, the guy came out of the customs booth to shake my hand and says, "Thank you for coming." In other words, we know we're in trouble. Thank you for coming anyway. It's a trouble spot. I don't live there, dear, and I can tell you that I can only imagine the issue and the question, the answer. We're going to give you something in just a moment. It's an example we've had from other people who have gone through this. Hope, perhaps, dropping into your heart and understanding that you're in the middle of something that there is resolution. It's coming. So the test truly is being peaceful with it, and peaceful with yourself, and trusting it's all going to be well as you go. Probably one of the most difficult things you can do. I want to turn to Monica because there's been some really good emails and some examples of this.
Yeah, and that question about how do I not get emotionally involved, you are emotionally involved. And it's a matter of, what do you choose? What level of emotion do you choose to use in that situation? And in 2014, there was a very similar thing where there was missiles coming into Israel, and you would see photos at night that looked like fireworks, but it wasn't. It was missiles. And a light worker from Israel had come to a crying event in Mount Shasta in the US and returned home. I received this email. I'm getting chills now, but I received this email, which I'm going to read. And it began by saying, "Shalom, Monica. Upon returning home from the Mount Shasta event, I was more or less like the Sleeping Beauty. The seminars, the channelings, and all of the energy of the mountain affected me so much I ended up sleeping a lot for about 2 weeks. Then I woke up to a very difficult reality of rockets and missiles being launched towards my country. And as a matter of fact, this situation is still going on. Yesterday, there was 170 during the day and night. Peaceful Mount Shasta seems so far, far away." Then she writes, "I was touched by the soothing, wise words from Lee that was sent in the Cryon Bulletin. I translated it and put it online in several places, and the reactions of people are full of gratitude and hope." And so here is where we invite you to find a place where you can drop into the stillness that exists within you. And even though there is turmoil around you, when you find that place of stillness within, you will receive messages of gratitude and hope. And I invite you to connect with this Lightworkers Facebook group. It's www.facebook.com/EMF.Israel. And you will find beautiful postings of the Cryon messages in Hebrew on that Facebook page. And go to those places where you become uplifted by messages. And if you feel appropriate, share those with others. It doesn't have to be a Cryon phrase. It's something that gives you an uplifting experience. And don't you find that amazing what people are able to do?
It is astonishing. And this reminds me of something that we actually published in Cryon Book 9, as I recall. And it's similar. It has nothing to do with Israel. And we have this, I have this up on the screen. Would you mind reading this for us, too?
Yeah, because turmoil is everywhere in every situation. There was a story from Faithe and Clement in Cryon Book 9, that's called The New Beginning. They write about how they went through a civil war in Africa in 1998 and how Cryon's messages were a beacon lighting their way through the darkest night. Now, their story goes into both perspectives from Faithe and Clement, and how they were facing these terrible civil war in Africa and how they navigated through it because they had messages of hope from Cryon. So I think the real answer is always about having a message of hope. And you can create that within yourself by going into coherence, focusing on the heart, connecting the triangle of your brain and your pineal and be in coherence. And just remember, you have an entire community of souls that are with you as you do that. So I hope that answers the questions that...
Well, we could even go further, and this is, I didn't expect to do this, but this is, wow, it's affecting me. I want to have hope for our country, for what it's going through. It doesn't have missiles, but it's to some, it's just as bad.
Yes.
Because there are things happening now that are taking our breath away. They're different. People are worried. There's fear. There's anger and all that. It's why we developed the Circle of 12 now a year ago.
I think you could say globally.
Globally.
There is not a country on this planet right now that doesn't have individuals looking at what they see on the media or around them and think, oh my goodness, when is this going to end?
We have such a global family. I think it'd be great for us all to take a moment, even before we go to bed tonight, and give hope for those who need it, who are truly in trouble, and also for those of us who are in fear and not as much in trouble. Some of those of you who have captured this essence and are peaceful can do so much more as a light to those who are not. This is what all of the reason we're here is for this. So it was a great question. This is why we chose it, so we could have a discussion more than giving you an absolute solution of here are the points to do, is to talk about the whole idea of what happens with coherence and thank goodness for people like Lynn McTaggart and Greg Braden and those who are working with global consciousness issues.
So let's do that right now. Let's, with our beautiful community joining together, let's create a field of coherence. And I invite you to close your eyes. You may even wish to place your hands in a posture where you are both sending energy and receiving energy. And in this infinity loop of connection between sending and receiving, let's place our attention into our soul. Each of us has a soul, and our soul, while we feel it is the individual soul for us, it is part of a collective family of souls. We are connected by soul family. And our intention is that in this space that we are creating this field together with soul family, we send a wave of benevolence and hope and peace to every soul that is on the planet during this time of great shift. And so we just send the wave, benevolence, hope, peace to every soul right now on our beautiful planet that is going through a great shift. And in these next few weeks and months to come, we will radiate this experience of benevolence, hope, and peace outwardly, just as an energetic field. Nothing to be said, simply just to be in that space of radiating out into the soul family. You may now gently relax your hands as we welcome the continuation of the energy of benevolence, hope and peace from Kryon.
Greetings, dear ones. I am Kryon of Magnetic Service. We have said so often that this is not a message that is global, but a message that is personal. We'll say that again. These are indeed difficult times for so many. And yet we have said and will continue to say that the shift is upon you. This shift, which was predicted by the ancients, was predicted so many times in my channeling before 2012, is here. Almost a decade into it, now you see what we were talking about. It's not necessarily a shift that's going to bring you wars between countries like you thought might happen at this time. It's a war, a true war of dark and light. And you're starting to see the results of it. The answers that were given, even today, are about getting away from the fray to a position where you can see and feel your own magnificence and get yourself through it. Really, there are several aspects of this. How do you create more light? How can we move, you would say, this planet into more light, into more peace? That is one aspect. But while you're doing it, how do you survive it? How can you be coherent with that which is spiritual when all around you there's noise of darkness? And so we bring to you a series of channels to help you understand more of who you are, to help you get to that place. These 4 channels this month are going to be called the Extraordinary Human Soul. Or if you want to relabel them, the extraordinary attributes of the soul. Any of those things, we are talking about your soul. There'll be 4 channels, all of them available to everyone. Dear ones, we have spoken about the soul since we arrived. 31 years we have talked about the human soul. In 2014, we developed a program, I asked my partner to put this together where we talked about the attributes, the 9 attributes of the human soul and how they interfaced with you, your Akash, and all of the pieces and the parts of you that are esoteric, even your innate. That teaching we may do again, and I'll say that again. But for now, I'd like to speak about 4 extraordinary attributes that you need to be reminded of at this point in time so that you will understand who you are. Wow. If you could see yourself like we see you, it would take your breath away. Magnificent. Not just biology and a skin, with a brain, with some consciousness. That's so often how so many of you just see yourselves. How are we going to get from A to B, and how are we going to work this puzzle and get through it all? Oh, there's so much more going on. I would like to remind you of how big you are. The human soul, something that is a spiritual part of you, acknowledged worldwide. We have said this before. Every religion, belief system on the planet has some kind of metaphor for a bigger you, a soul. Those who work the oceans talk about numbers of souls on board. There is an acknowledgement from all Scripture that there is something bigger than you. It's a shame, dear ones, that a linear planet with linear belief systems that are supposedly ones that are worshiping a magnificent God would then tell you the soul exists for one reason: to be punished later or to be rewarded later. It's almost like the soul is some kind of a vehicle, punishment or reward. You have something that happens after you die. Does that sound right to you? Your soul is part of the creative source. Did you know that? I'm going to talk about how big you are. How big is the soul of a human being? There are those who actually try to put measurements on it, saying, well, it has to do this and that, perhaps mixing it up with that which is called the Merkaba, which is a spiritual bubble around you in linear form while you walk the planet. Huge it is. 8 meters wide around every single human being. That's not your soul. Let's talk about this. When did humans get their soul? And the answer is yes. They never did. It always was. Did you know that? This is a lesson that is difficult to teach and understand and cognize because the human is linear. Another time we have said this: everything has a beginning and an end to you on your planet. Whether it's your life or your car or a pair of socks or a string, it has a beginning and an end. And so this is how you think. Of course, until you get to God. What was the beginning of God? And you would say, well, there was none, because God always was. Well, dear ones, use some spiritual logic. If your soul is part of God's creative source, it always was. You, the bigger you, the soul of you, always was. Always. And you always will be. And you might say, well, that doesn't make sense. How does this then relate to humanism and all of these things? Dear ones, this is a puzzle to you. It is not to us, and we've explained it many, many times. This soul of yours, designed to do the very things you're doing now, to come to various places and take human form and develop consciousness and work the puzzle And then when you're done, you go back to the soul and it goes perhaps someplace else. It's all part of a universal system of beauty, benevolence, kindness. And there is a purpose for it. There's a purpose for the veil. All of the things. There's a purpose for free choice, of having you here on this planet being able to make choices without interference from an angel standing next to you saying, don't do that. There is a reason. But your soul is immense. How big is God? You would say, okay, I understand what I don't understand. That the soul is huge and immense, but I'm a human. And I'm here right now. How does that help me? And I will tell you this, because there is a multi-dimensional part of every single human being. And it's not sequestered into that which is perhaps your pineal. It's in your DNA. It's in every cell of your body. It is starting to receive light. That is what the shift is about. Listen, the shift on the planet is about you receiving more multidimensional savvy, more multidimensional awareness, which is starting to evolve into higher consciousness. Do you want that again? This is evolution, an evolution of consciousness. And that's what is happening. You are starting to receive that multidimensional part. And that is creating the evolution of awareness, light, consciousness. That is the thing that is stirring everything that you're seeing right now. And that is also going to stir into some solutions, because all of you are going to become more aware. Brian, I'm not really sure I understand how we can be multidimensional. What does that mean? Let me give you a hint. Something we have given you before to show you this equipment you have called DNA, called cellular structure, called consciousness, is not simply in your skin. Your body's in your skin. Your consciousness and the multidimensional parts and pieces of your DNA is immense. Identical twins. Let's go there again. Identical twins on this planet. Do you know any? Would you like to speak to them about what I'm going to say next? They'll tell you. One can be in one hemisphere of this planet and another can be in another hemisphere in this planet. But when something happens that might affect them both, like for instance, their mom's in trouble, they both know it. One will pick up the phone, and the other one will answer, and the other one will say, I felt it. What's happened? In other words, with identical DNA, two human beings, two individuals, two consciousnesses are allied in such a fashion that thousands of miles away, they're getting the same information. That has a physical nomenclature, a term, a name, and it's called entanglement. It is a quantum aspect, and that is, a quantum aspect is one that is beyond linear. Entanglement, well known now to physicists, is something that is astonishing. Where you are so big, if you're entangled with anything, that you could be on another star, another planet. And if something happens here, the other part of you would know it instantly. Distance doesn't matter. Time doesn't matter. That exists. Ask a physicist. It's real. And it's happening even within your DNA. How big are you? You're as big as God. I want you to understand that you have the ability to drop into your soul, into your heart, they say, and have the most benevolent wave of love come over you, where actually that consciousness of yours will stop the rhetoric of all the negative things and say, it's all right. I am that I am. I am beyond what I ever will be. I came before I was. That is a multidimensional statement. And you will know who you are, helping you to get through all of the strife that is so linear and so now. There is hope for this planet, dear ones. There is hope. There is solution. if you will hold on to it. That's the thought. That's the light. Light is starting to amplify itself, and in the process, it's disturbing the dark a lot. And the darkness wants to raise up and tell you it won't go away. But light will win this puzzle. Light is already winning in certain areas. Hold fast. Know who you are. I am Kryon in love with humanity. And so it is.
And I invite you to place your hands on your heart just for another moment or two and really integrate that beautiful message of your magnificent soul. And if you've had your eyes closed, you may open up those precious eyes of yours, bringing your awareness now more fully into your body. Bring your awareness into the room. You can relax your hands down onto your lap. And we move into the next part of our program. And Lee, this is great because we're actually interviewing another Lee.
Well, not only that, but intuitive. He's a channeler.
Absolutely.
Come on. Anyway,
Absolutely.
Well, that's part of his work. It's a part of his work.
We're in love with him already.
I know.
And
what can I say?
Lee, we want to make sure. Lee, are you there?
I am here. I'm here. Hi.
All right.
Hi, wonderful. Well, Lee Harris has so many amazing things to offer. We want to tell you all about that.
He's a globally acclaimed energy intuitive and transformational teacher who offers grounded, practical teachings focused on helping conscious, intuitive, and sensitive people heal, thrive, and live a better life. He began doing intuitive readings out of his home in England in 2004 as a part-time healer. Part-time healer. That's it. We'll talk about that later. Now based in California, he has built the company Lee Harris Energy into the multimedia worldwide event company that it is. His book, Energy Speaks, became an instant bestseller in March 2019, and his intuitive messages reach hundreds of thousands of people every month. They really do, folks. Hundreds of thousands of people every month via his free and highly popular monthly energy update videos. These videos offer practical guidance for navigating daily life with clarity, empowerment, and optimism.
Now, Lee has an acclaimed Soul Magic and Energy Mastery retreats, as well as the Energy Tune-Up seminars. They are held around the globe, and they're adventures into the deepest aspects of living, loving, and awakening. Leading a 10-member international team, Lee is passionate about grounding creative spirituality into these challenging times. And boy, are they challenging, right, folks? Lee is also very determined to see people experience impactful and abundant lives while supporting each other through community.
All of this, and we really haven't mentioned anything about the music. I don't want to go into it because it'll take another 2 or 3, times as long as the other one. Many albums, great musical associates, composers, very popular with the new age musical scene.
A true creative, Lee.
A true creative.
Yeah.
And I love that because of my background as well. But I'll let you talk about the music if you choose. Welcome to the show, and we turn it over to you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me here. And Lee, it's a real treat to get to connect with you after all of these years of knowing you. And thank you for all that you have done to pioneer this field, which for me was a very unknown field when I first began channeling. And thank you.
So how did it all begin for you, Lee? Take us through all of the unfolding of your journey.
So in my late teens, I started to heal myself one step at a time. So I got very into self-growth work and self-development. And I would go off to workshops and I would have tarot readings. And whenever I would get into the healing realms as a participant, I would feel more alive, more passionate, this is life. This is the real thing. This is not This is not the smaller version of life that we're living when we're not in this energy field. But I didn't realize at the time that I would end up working in it and being a facilitator. That came a lot later. And I was 23 years old when I started channeling. And it happened to me very spontaneously on the tube train, the London Underground in the UK where I was living. And I just heard the voice of my guides one day. And after I had, gone through all the questions you go through where you think, is this what multiple personality disorder is? It could have been. What I soon realized was the voice that I would hear had not only the most useful information and could see things that I couldn't see, but as soon as I sat with the information that I was given, my whole energy field would change and I would start to expand again. So that began my relationship with the channeling. And I think for a few years there, with the few friends that I felt safe to talk about it to, who were spiritual as well, I would give free readings and people would come to me. And I think it was a friend who was a yoga teacher who suggested I do it for a job. So it was 2004 when I started doing donation-based readings, and I didn't think anyone would come. And I did readings for 15 years, and out of the readings grew everything else.
That's astonishing. I couldn't help but notice, and now you're helping hundreds of thousands of people today, but in your description of yourself, you don't use the word channeling. Is that because people seem to be afraid of channeling?
Well, it's funny. I remember thinking with channeling that people were quite afraid of it, especially in England. I have to say, this country is much more receptive. And this is England, let's say, in the year 2000, so 21 years ago. I did actually call myself a channeler, but what I also did, because that word would be a barrier for people, I think the heading on my leaflet was guidance writing. And what I did in the leaflet was I explained what the effect of the experience of the reading would be, as well as saying I was a channeler. And now I think because I work in a few different ways, so there's the channeling side where I channel my guides, who I refer to as the Z's. They gave me the name Zachary when I first met the lead spokesperson. And then in later years, a few other names came through beginning with Z. So the audience who followed my work started referring to them as the Z's because they didn't know who was going to show up, but they all began with the Z. So
I love it.
They became collective again. In 2012, they said, we're now going to speak as a collective voice again because unity is important, and it's been useful that we've separated this way, but from now on, we will only be a group. And so sometimes I'm channeling the Z's for a message, and other times I'm speaking to people from what I call the intuitive level. So if the Z's are the top of my ladder, the ladder I can access, the intuitive level is kind of halfway down. So I'm getting bits of information from them about what I'm seeing, but I'm also sensing and feeling what I'm feeling in the collective intuitively, and then hopefully giving people either recognition about what they're feeling or aha moments or different ways to deal with it, so that in a way we normalize the world of energy and intuition, which, as we know, is really very normal. It's very much a part of our lives. But I think in mainstream society still, there can be a barrier or a resistance or a disbelief about it, which I fully understand. If you haven't experienced it, it would be easy to think it doesn't exist.
I agree. I want you to take us through, if you can. Many people know you from Energy Speaks, and that's how they know your name and all. What is it about? What happened to get you to write that book? I mean, everything. I think they'd like to know that.
I didn't want to write that book, Lee. I was doing something else. I was thinking I was going to write a book called The A to Z of Energy, which I soon realized was enormous and was going to take far too long. And during that period of time, I had self-published 2 Energy Speaks volumes. And I was on tour doing lots of live events that year. And people would always say to me, I love those books. I have them by my bedside. I flick open a page. So I had this opportunity to create a book, and I suddenly thought, I'm not doing the guides a service by not using this opportunity to look at all of the material that we have in writing and add a whole load more that has never been published, but also to re-edit and reorganize the way it was presented. So Energy Speaks is a bit like a greatest hits of everything that my guides delivered between the years of 2006 to 2018. And we basically took parts from messages about every area of life. So you've got sex and sexual energy, you've got money and abundance, you've got sleep and what happens when we sleep. So Energy Speaks is kind of a compendium of some of the most important topics my guides had kind of offered to us as to how we're experiencing life and how we can work with it.
Beautiful. One of the things that I've seen unfold in Lee's work is a real shift from 2020. Well, really it started in 2012, but 2020 was a whole new direction for Cryon and the Cryon work. And so I am curious as to whether you are feeling for yourself and your work, whether there's a new direction coming out of it.
Yeah, good. Well, I'd love to know more about that for you, actually, you guys. But for me, it was a couple of different things happened. I knew in around 2016, I thought I was going to quit. And I sat with it for almost a year. Wow. And, of course you think, well, what else am I going to do? Because this is, this keeps me busy and keeps me occupied. But I felt like I'd come to the end of the road in a way with everything I'd been doing. And I would just be repeating myself. So around that point, I kept hearing this message from them, you are needed and now is your time. And this was a message I was being called to deliver to people. So I realized I needed to diversify the way I worked in order to hopefully help empower the other people who were ready to go out there into the world and do their work, but perhaps didn't yet know how or had some fears or some lack of strategy, whatever it was. So I really started shifting my work about 5 years ago, but end of 2019, it got very serious. There were a series of events that happened in my personal life and in my work life that gave me this knowing. I was in Costa Rica at the end of 2019, and I had a lot of very powerful, life-changing and mystical experiences there. And I knew when I came away from Costa Rica that I was being initiated. And it wasn't that I hadn't taken my work seriously before, but I got this feeling of things are getting serious now. And they'd always talked about 2017 to 2024 being very difficult years on Earth. And yet they also said these were years that people who were light workers were probably going to feel more alive, more on purpose, and even potentially happier than they ever had, even while we were seeing all of this chaos and unraveling going on around us, which seemed a strange message, when I heard it in 2016. But I think now I'm like, oh, okay, I get it. So for me, everything got quite serious starting November 2019, and then mid March, just before all the lockdowns hit, I just had this overwhelming feeling of, here we go. Things are about to get very, very intense. Yeah. So it's definitely colored my work ever since then. And even though we do plan several months ahead, we're very in the moment too. So we can respond to what we're seeing and what's going on. So I would say that's probably been the biggest change for me in the last couple of years. But the messages are very direct too, about more than anything, they will talk about the importance of us holding our frequency, holding our core, discerning what's ours, discerning what's illusion. And I think the messages are just a little more rubber meets the road time than before, perhaps.
I agree totally with that. We're experiencing that very same thing. It's great to hear it from you and in your words. Now, it's fun for me because every time I'm on a show, people ask me about channeling and things like, so I'm going to do it to you. One of the things that I would like to know from you, because channeling is different for each of us. It's not a thing that people do. It has to do with our personalities and our life force. When you get messages, are they basically messages you're putting in the book and delivering, or do you get personal messages to you, Lee, that say, here, go here, do this, or whatever? How does that work for you?
Absolutely. So it's three types for me. There are the messages that I bring for people, which, as you both know, you're holding space for something for people, and you've agreed to show up and you've agreed to bring a message, or if it's a recording, that's one side of the work. So that's when it's going out more to the public. For myself, there are two different ways I get the messages. They either hand them to me when I'm not looking for them, and that doesn't happen a lot. It might happen as infrequently as 6 to 10 times a year that I hear a verbal message, but I'm working a lot with my intuition anyway.
Yeah.
I'm testing things all the time with my body, my senses, following, living intuitively more than I ever have anyway. But then the other side is when I hold space for my own question and answer session with them. But the times they give me unsolicited messages are usually the hardest. Like I was living in Colorado, Boulder in 2014. I'd been there for 4 or 5 years, and I really thought, oh, this is going to be my home for a while. And I just heard one day, you're leaving Colorado, prepare, tie everything up. You have to go, and California was where I knew I had to go to. So even though I trusted the message, I then of course went through a certain level of grief for about 3 to 6 months, just kind of letting go of it, because I knew it was correct. But sometimes they're ahead of us in terms of the timeline, and they're not necessarily dealing with the human feelings or healings that we have to in order to be here on the planet.
So we spent most of this time talking about what's gone on with you and what's happened and what's about channeling. I would like, if it's possible, to take some time for you to actually teach what you teach. What do you have to say to this audience who is looking at you now about our times? What is it you're teaching that you can now teach us, and what are the tips and things of that nature to get through all of this?
Sure. So let's see. Well, not knowing what you are all holding, what you're holding for your audience, I'll just kind of go with what comes to me. A couple of kind of hit points that are really coming up right now. The Z's keep talking about the world situation. It will get worse before it gets better. And that part of our job is to find our balance point within that waving sea that we're in all the time. So by all means, have the grief you need to feel, have the sadness, have the anger, but the emotion should be short. If we're really truly letting our emotions move through us and healing through what we need to heal through in resonance to everyone's feelings and everything that's going on, we should be able to move it through our body and flush. If we're getting stuck, if we're getting impacted, if you're depressed for a very long time or you're angry for a very long time, you really need to dig in and get to the core of that, because it will pile up more and more. So the ways you can do that are to enlist the help of a friend who is patient and will hold space for you, or a therapist or a counselor, or find ways to put your congested feelings or congested experiences under the microscope. Perhaps it's journaling. I mean, there are many different ways that we can really give focus to our healing. But the other piece that they speak about when it comes to our healing, which is a little different to letting your feelings move through you and investigating them if they're not, is ancestral healing. So they've talked a lot about how with much of the, the name that was given conspiracy theories that we've all been taught to kind of have as the headline for some of these revealing and interesting and illuminating and sometimes misleading pieces of information that we find, is they say, check the emotion it's coated in. Because they said most conspiracy theories will usually have at least some grain of truth in them. But they said, is it designed to inform or enlighten you, or is it designed to hijack you? And you'll know it's hijacking you if it's coated in a certain emotion. So let's say someone delivers information to you and you hear it and you're like, oh my God, really? Is that what's going on in the world? That's quite scary. Ask yourself, has the information scared you, or was it coated in a fearful way? And what you have to be mindful of is the agendas that are running on the planet that are darker. They want to co-opt visionaries, and they want to co-opt people who are used to manifesting and seeing the future. So if they coat it in a certain emotion and you then take that fear into your body and go, oh my God, that's actually what's going to happen. They said no timeline is set. They said there are certain things that we are going to have to go through in the next few years that are going to be thematically unavoidable, but that we create the future. So we have to be very careful that we are flushing through our fear, flushing through our emotional triggers, and also paying attention to when things are ancestral. So, for example, they said people who are panicked about certain areas of the climate or certain things they're seeing going on with governments right now, ask yourself, am I completely in the moment with this? Or am I processing what happened in Pompeii? Or am I processing what happened in Atlantis? Or am I processing that time that I had my freedom taken away in another life? And it's not to dismiss those ancestral healings we're going through, quite the opposite. We're shedding a lot through everything that's going on in the world. And the more we can shed this stuff and allow ourselves to shed it and hold space for it, but let it move through our system, the quicker we will come back to our vibrational power, which is what we need now. And the other piece I'll throw in is they've talked about the earth and underneath the earth a lot in the last few months. They said many of you are focused out there horizontally, and many of you look to the stars and the cosmos. They said, don't forget the power and the energy and the crystalline energy that's in the earth, which wants to come up and through us at this time. And we can only really allow that in if we shed some of our earth density. So again, that would be the fears, the hopes, the emotions that we have. So they're very inclusive of emotions. And they say that our emotions are our greatest power, but they need to be as aligned as they possibly can be. So that's why anyone who's stuck in something or noticing a repetitive pattern in your life, a repetitive fear, a repetitive anger, a repetitive judgment, this is because it's up for healing for you. And the more you can do to help yourself heal it, the sooner you'll return to your power and your light. The last thing I'll say is they say that silence is golden. You know, choose your battles when it comes to speaking your truth. Everyone's speaking their truth right now, but very few people are listening or critically reviewing the truth that they're absorbing. They're just taking that piece of information as golden or gospel because they don't have emotional or energetic capacity to take a wider look at everything. So they said there'll be times when you need to speak your truth in order to perhaps illuminate something for someone else. And there will be times when silence will be your ally. They say that this is going to take a few years to really clear up and shake out. So they say conserve your energy as much as you can. And when you've had enough of the outside drama, make sure you come back. Self-care, refuel, remember you're alive in this moment. None of us are promised life tomorrow anyway. And that can be a very good way to bring yourself back to the present and go, what can I appreciate right now? What can I cultivate right now? What can I bring right now? And equally, if you're exhausted, rest and get off Facebook newsfeed if you're exhausted, because that isn't going to help you.
I completely resonate with everything you just said.
Yeah.
And you brought in the ancestors, you brought in the earth, Gaia.
Yeah.
And even as you were talking about flushing through the emotions, I had very strong visualizations of sending those emotions down into the earth, Gaia, because what happens, it gets transmuted in the energy, in the crystalline grid, and it comes back to you as available energy. And I invite you, if you want to elaborate more on that grounding earth connection, I would love to hear more about that from you.
Well, I love the way that you just explained it. It's perfect. And one of the things that they have said, which I think is very in line with where you're going, is they said the earth is, they said she can take a lot. She can take a lot more than the surface can.
Yeah.
So I really love what you said about sending it down. It's interesting. One other thing that, I have noticed is reminding us all that our self-care routines and our shedding routines are very personal. I know for me, when I was, new to the spiritual community and the self-care community, the part of me in my head that thought am I getting it right? Is this the right way to go? I still see a lot of that in our communities. I should probably do yoga, even though I tried it 5 times and it did nothing for me. It's like, well, no, at that point, maybe you let yoga go and you go over to something else. Right.
That's like Lee and I. I mean, I enjoy doing my own form of yoga. Lee and we joke about I'm going off for my morning walk, and Lee will say, well, I'm going for my morning sit.
So you didn't have to tell people that.
Because he likes to just go to the computer.
My own kind of yoga. Yes.
Yeah, but yeah,
That's
tell
brilliant.
us more with your self-care and
Yeah.
everything you were
Yes.
sharing.
Yeah, well, and it's been a long journey for me to both find the things that work for me, but also let myself off the hook with the things that I thought I should be doing. For years I thought, well, I should be meditating, and then I realized there are different ways I meditate in my life. Sure, it's not the way that meditators do it, and so the most important thing, and this is one of the things that I think we're a little out of kilter with as a world right now, is knowing where our balance is and knowing how to soothe ourselves. And sure, sometimes you might soothe yourself with 3 glasses of wine or 2 donuts, but you're going to pay the price for that in a way long term. So there's no judgment here on the things you are doing to soothe. But if you notice that your soothing mechanisms are all either quite extreme or not necessarily long-term beneficial, this is really a time to figure out what is it that does light me up. And it might be putting on Metallica in your bedroom really loud and jumping around and screaming your head off. So, this is where we are all unique, and it's important for you to, away from your partner, your kids, the people who are dependent on you, just to have something for you that if you do this for 10, 15 minutes a day, perhaps several times, you will reset yourself. And that is also part of shaking off the energy of the collective that we're in. Because even if you aren't focused on the news or involved with other people, we can feel it. We can feel the anxiety levels in the collective right now. We also can have them ourselves. So this soothing practice, being very personal, is very important. And they have been talking about self-care like nobody's business in the last couple of years, more so than they ever did. And so I've found, as I've deepened with my own, I'm like, oh, I am much more balanced. I am more grounded. I am less stressed than I could be if I wasn't taking care of just these things in my life that work for me. So one I'll throw out is water. When we have a shower or put ourselves into a body of water, we break the electrical circuitry of our energy field. So if your energy field is a little revved up and you introduce water to it, onto the body, over the body, or put your body in it, it will change your circuitry. So water is one of my go-tos, to kind of get myself in water and shift my energy. But for people listening or watching, it might be very personal. So don't be ashamed of your self-care routines, and do make sure you practice them not as a luxury, but as a necessity.
It's fun because everything you've said is what I've been teaching for years in different words, including what's happening now and all this. And then you just went to water. And anybody who follows me knows that when I have any problems myself, and there's quite sometimes I do, what I immediately do is go take a shower. and that's when I get the best intuition flashes, and even some personal message from client. But I almost have to be in the shower for this. And people laugh and say, well, at least you're going to get cleaner than you think. But truly, that's right. We only have a couple of minutes left. Tell folks all about your site, your YouTube, your messages, so that they can hook into all this.
Great. So my website's leeharrisenergy.com. And if you go there, you'll find everything that I do. And I do put out usually 3 to 4 videos a week on YouTube. My channel there is Lee Harris Energy. And once a month, I do something called an energy update, where for about 25 to 30 minutes, I'll take the pulse of what's going on energetically, tell you the 6 to 8 themes that I'm noticing are happening now or just about to come in the coming month, and give a few tips or tools to deal with the energies that we're doing. And then the other thing that I do, as well as my members community, the portal, I create music with Davor Bozik, and we create music tuned to 528 hertz, which is a healing frequency. Yeah. So sometimes it's a very much sounds like a traditional or alternative pop song. Other times it sounds more new age. Sometimes the spoken word, but we tune it to 528 hertz because that's a healing frequency. So as you listen, the encoding goes into your body. And we did a similar thing with Energy Speaks, the audiobook, which Devor underscored for me with tones and frequencies that line up with our human bodies and different parts of the universe, so that as you're listening, that sound goes into and through you for a healing as well.
I'm
there's
so
so
glad
much
you
here.
mentioned the
Oh, yes.
music, because
Yes.
everything is energy. Everything is vibration,
Yeah.
and the music just cuts through all the static and noise and feeds the cellular structure of your body. Lee and I were just talking about how
Yeah.
impactful music is, and
Yeah.
the reason we love movies so much is because of the soundtrack.
Well, that's what I did for a living. I recorded
You
soundtracks
did,
before.
and music just goes right into
It does.
here.
It does.
And I encourage everyone to go and check out Lee Harris's music.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's a vibrational frequency that is communicating energetically.
And that's where the healing is.
Yes.
Too. I mean, if you
Absolutely.
haven't read the book, just
Yeah.
listen to his music, and you
And
get
thank you for sharing that, because I was a huge movie buff as a teen,
Yeah.
and it took me years to work out. I had all these soundtrack CDs in my
Yeah.
house.
Yes.
Like, why do you have all these soundtracks? I was the only person I knew doing it, and it took me years to go. Part of movies for me is the music, so I'm very aligned with you guys there, and that's cool, Lee, to know that you used to
yeah.
record soundtracks.
That's what I did. So I guess I could end it now and say thank you, but there's one very profound question that everybody wants to know, and that is, are you going to grow your beard back?
Well, that's been I decided just to shave it off on Friday because I thought, I'll just see what it looks like. I haven't seen it for a while. And I've had very differing opinions from my mom, from my husband, from my friends. The people are like, grow it back, don't grow it back. And I'm like, oh. So I don't know what I'll do.
I know
see.
we're going to get letters that say, that wasn't really Lee Harris. I know what he looks like. It's right.
I did think to myself, oh no, I did a photo shoot for the website because we didn't have any photos of me with the beard, and they've only been up for 3 months. I don't want to do all that again, so maybe I'll just have to grow it back for a while till I can be bothered to do all that again.
Oh, dear. Thank you.
I just wanted to say I love what you've done with your hair.
Oh, yes. I
And-
love what you've done with your hair and your beard. So,
Thank you.
That's right. And on that note, go ahead, Monica.
On that note, it has been so delightful having you share your energy, wisdom, and knowledge with us. I had so much information come in this short time with you. I'm sure everyone listening and tuning in to this has as well. So please make sure you go and check out leeharrisenergy.com. We are going to take a 10-minute break, and then we'll be back for the Circle of 12.
Welcome back, everyone. I love Lee Harris.
I know.
Just let's
Absolutely.
just say it. It's great to have these guests on. I'm in love, I think, with all of our guests every time we come back from break from anyone. But this was very, very special, and I'm so pleased that he said yes to be on our show, because I know he's a very busy guy.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you hear the wisdom that he shares, it's universal. And I think that's when you resonate to that message, it has deep grains of truth.
It makes so much sense as well. And I love to hear it. I love to hear the things that I teach presented again in a more, I would say, upscale way, and meaning that it's a more contemporary, different words, a younger person. And he's the guy, as far as I'm concerned. I just, and his music. And I'm sorry we didn't really even get into that as much. And we just love music. And
Absolutely.
he's got some great stuff.
Yeah, I think you can go to leeharrismusic.com, and that should take you to look at all of his music albums. So we probably need to move into the Circle of 12.
I think people want that.
Yeah, I want that. So as we prepare for the Circle of 12, many of you are joining for the very first time, while others have been doing the Circle of 12 experience for at least a year now. And whatever stage of the Circle of 12 experience you have had, I ask that you release all expectations. Enter into this experience as though this is the first time you are going into a new journey of discovery. Some of you may get visuals and visualizations. Others of you may not see anything visual. You may simply have a feeling. And whatever it is that you are experiencing, trust that it is happening exactly as you need it. Simply be present, observe, no judgment, let the experience unfold. And the best way we can allow that experience to unfold is to close our eyes, relax your body, and be in a position of being open to receive and have an allowance to connect with the beautiful energy of your magnificent soul.
Greetings, dear ones. I am Kryon. Come a little closer. The Circle of 12 is a meditation that is guided in a way that might help you to understand more about you. I'd like to reference the channeling of earlier today in this program. We started describing how big truly the human being is on a spiritual scale. Not the human being in the skin that you say is you, but the one that is far, far grander, for every single human being has that soul. It leads you to start to ask some questions. One of the questions that I would hope you would ask is this: if I am really that big, what is it that would keep me from being able to simply talk to the cosmos? After all, I'm from there. Why is it that I feel so sequestered, or perhaps so small, or so unloved, some say? And these are the very questions that we ponder and work with you. For dear ones, perhaps it's time for you to understand, finally, the tools that have always been yours. Let's go back to the channeling for a moment of today. We spoke of the human being's multidimensionality. We spoke of the science that is starting to be yours that show that there are things in multidimensionality that are profoundly different than anything you experience today. There are some who say, well, we're moving into a new dimension. Actually, you are moving into all the dimensions. You have been four dimensions bound, I would say, for eons. The four dimensions, height, width, depth, time, that's been you. A multidimensional human being is one that starts to expand into the things that we are now speaking of. Starting to be aware of a consciousness that might be immense. If you are becoming multidimensional, and you are, do you understand that that allows you to have a communication that is beyond the veil? More than that. What if you started to understand that your consciousness can be entangled with the very DNA of your body? How many of you are aware that all humans have the potential for what I will call self-channeling. You've been taught that you go to the doctor, you get a prescription, you take a pill, or you go somewhere and you get advice, or you get the points that you need, or you have the lists that you need, and then you activate the lists and you do this and that, and then you wait. This is a linear attitude. It is a linear process. And it's all you've ever known. You grew up with this. This has been your reality. And now teachers are starting to give you information that says the very thing that is inside you and always has been, and you can call it whatever you want to. We'll say innate, higher self, any of these things that are part of your multidimensional selves. They've always been there. They're responsible for spontaneous remission in the magic that you've seen, that you desire, and you say, if I could only have that, or what can I do for it? Let's get another book. Let's get another process. Let's get another pill. It just sits there in front of you, looking at you, saying, well, why don't you try me? And it's you. Your face is looking at you in the mirror in a multidimensional way with a funny expression on its face and saying, are you ready yet? That is the truth. There is so much more to you than some of you have ever been told. What's your belief system? How many belief systems were featuring something that is perhaps not well accepted, that would say, did you know that you are God? Blasphemous, of course. That's what you've been taught it is. What if it were sparks of the truth? If your soul is part of the creative source, God made your soul not apart from God, but part of God. Your soul is part of the creative source of the universe. Therefore, you are a part of God. What about the namaste? What does that mean? Have you ever analyzed that? The God in me meets the God in you. The God in you meets the God in me. This has been the ancient greeting. Did you ever think about what that meant? What God are they talking about? They're talking about some human God in some skin in a faraway land? No, they're talking about the creative God, the one that you know as God. If you even want to use the word God, Spirit. You have always been part of the cosmos. Always. We've told you that the soul is eternal. There are so many belief systems on the planet that would negate even the idea of that. They say, well, you have a soul, but you know you got it when you were born, and then it goes from there. Instead of perhaps it was always there. And if it were, what has it been doing since it was created? And then we said, well, it never was created any more than God was created. So it's always been there. Did it just simply arrive for your birth? Or perhaps there's a grander plan. What if you have been here with this soul many times on this planet, and maybe even other planets, maybe even other universes? If you've always had a soul, dear ones, you are immense. So how does that apply to right now, you might say? How does that apply to my life, crying right now as I sit here in troubled times? And I will tell you, if you will start understanding that there is a evolution going on in your consciousness, if you will acknowledge, perhaps, just perhaps, that applies to you. Or you sit there and go, it applies to me. And you start affirming to your own selves, I am feeling my multidimensionality, and therefore, I am starting to see what I can do. Are you truly entangled with your cellular structure? That means that your consciousness is not apart from your body. Your whole culture has always told you that you have no effect on your body. You sit there and simply watch it do whatever it does. You know I'm right. You're told almost from birth, something hurts, you look at it and go, I don't know why. You're like a part of it. You've got to go someplace and get a pill or whatever to correct it. Not saying I hurt, but it hurts. My hand hurts instead of I hurt. You are every cell in your body in a multidimensional way. Every one. You are the dirt of the earth. Did you know that? You're so big. Your soul is encompassing all things that are. You are part of this planet and the sentience of it. So is it too much to ask that you would cross a bridge with me into an unknown area that simply starts to let you see it? That's what the Circle of 12 is. It's a time where we start a revelation. You have to start with small steps, dear ones. How are you going to unlearn the things that perhaps you've been told that are only a partial of what is there? This does not rewrite anything regarding that which you've told about the grandness of God. This doesn't rewrite a doctrine that says God is great and God is good and God is benevolent. It enhances it. God is so much bigger than anything you've ever been told, and you have always been part of it. Always been part of it. Imagine that any miracle you have ever read about or seen or heard about is actually part of you. This is the teaching that there is no separation between the creative source and the human consciousness, the human akash, the human soul. That which is part of the Creator is you. The teaching may be apart from what you've ever been told. The soul does not exist to be punished later. The soul exists to come back and grow with humanity and evolve into light for this planet. That's why the soul is here. This is what has happened on other planets as well. You are not the only one in the cosmos. Did you really think so? It's a beautiful, grand system of enlightenment. And we want to take you right now to a place where you can exercise this just a little bit. I want you to imagine, again, a bridge. This bridge has always been a metaphor that you will cross. Crossing the bridge means you enter from one place from another. You go from A to B. That is a metaphor, and you have to do that. Sometimes it's a door for your linear mind to understand, okay, I'm going to another consciousness or feeling. There is a bridge, and it has a mist in the middle so you cannot see the other side. And you have to trust that what's beyond that mist is okay. And what's on the other side is the bigger you. The one you were never told about, not really. The one that I've told you about for 31 years. But you're still in a linear body, so it's hard to imagine anything but what you know and what you feel. It's a place where you can get rid of all the fears. You can talk to yourselves. Where healing exists, where entanglement is an everyday thing. It's a place of training, dear ones. Training so that when you come back across the bridge, when you get out of this meditation and you go to work, a piece of that stays with you. And the more you go there, the better it gets for you to understand who you are. Take my hand. Right now, let's cross the bridge. You go through the mist with me, and what you see is completely and totally dependent on what your mind eye wants to see. In your mind's eye, what do you feel? What does your pineal do right now? That is to say, is it involved in this, or are you still thinking in a linear fashion? Dear ones, this is the grandest place you will ever visit. It's a place that we have visited with you now for a year that I told my partner to develop and evolve with you. so that you'd have an idea of the grandness of you and what can be accomplished when you get out of 4 dimensions. When you cross the bridge, acknowledge this is not a place, this is you. But the bridge represents an acknowledgement and an awareness of you. We go through a door, which is often a portal. Again, we're going from one thing to another in a linear fashion, so that you will understand we're changing things. You go into this theater in the round with me, a sunken theater with an audience around it. You go downstairs to get up on stage. And for a year, you've been doing that. Let's do it again. Go down the stairs. The audience is not there yet. It often shows up after you get on stage, because then we tell you a little bit about who it is. There's a chair on stage, there always is. Every so often, there's no chair. There'll be a few of those coming up as well. But there is a chair today. When I say there always is, there's always is for a certain kind of ceremony. This is one of those kinds. I want you to sit down, relax, be comfortable. Dear ones, there's some beautiful thing about to happen if you'll allow it. If you'll allow it, it's exciting for me to know what can happen here. I've seen it. Oh, I've seen it. If you wonder whether our tears in heaven, a metaphor, dear ones, there are. Joy. Joy. On the other side of the veil, with us all peering at you even now. Will she do it? Will he do it? Will they finally group together so that the cells and the DNA and the consciousness are all snapped into one picture? And they start talking. Have you ever wondered what it would be like to talk to God directly? Perhaps no one even else listening. Have you ever wanted that? How many steps are there involved that you have learned in a direct communication with the Creator of the universe? And I will give you the answer. 0 steps, because that Creator of the universe has always remained in your cells, always. So right now, I want you to open your heart and your mind, and in that audience is going to be all that is. It's no longer a theater, it's a stadium that is as big as the universe, dear ones. And when you open your mouth to say anything, when you open your mind to think anything, right now, the ones and one who are listening to it is all that is. You are a part of creative source. What do you want to say? Let me give you a hint. Dear creation, thank you for loving me enough to put me right here, right now, where I can do anything that's possible. Where disease cannot exist with this kind of purity of love. Where troubles don't exist where I am. Where nothing inappropriate can be around me, where I sit as a piece of all that is. The circle of 12 itself diminishes in light of who you are. That's how big you are. That's how powerful you are. I want you to sit and think about direct, complete, total communication with the cosmos and your cells and everything that is right now. All the systems you've been taught about, they lay at your feet, and something far larger is here. You. Is it possible that this is all real? Dear ones, how evolved can you be? What is next for you? Sit here and ponder these things, for this is your legacy, human being, to unite with the cosmos and evolve into light. A metaphor? Perhaps. Real? Yes. I am Kryon in love with humanity. Stay. Stay and listen. And so it is.